Welcome to Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston, PhD. Dr. Glenn is a clinical psychologist and former multi-million-dollar consultant to the big food industry and uses his experience to help you defeat your cravings. This show will help you to focus on dramatically reducing cravings and leaving the diet mentality behind, so you can more easily and effortlessly achieve your health, fitness, and body composition goals. Please remember, no doctor-patient relationship is created via this show, and you are responsible for confirming any changes to your diet, health, or psychological routines with an appropriately licensed professional before implementing them. Before we get started, if you haven't downloaded the free smartphone app to access dozens of these recordings all in one place, as well as to avail yourself of a confidential community for support, motivation, and assistance, please visit the podcast link on defeatyourcravings.com as soon as possible. And now, here's your host, Dr. Glenn Livingston.
Hey, it's the very good Dr. Glenn Livingston with defeatyourcravings.com, and I'm here with a follow-up with a kind-hearted woman named Anna, who's agreed to share this session with you so you can benefit from her experience and strength and hope and wisdom, as well as her trials and tribulations and stumbles and falls. Isn't that right, Anna?
Yes, and thank goodness there's lots of stumbles and falls so that I have successes too.
Yeah, you look at it as a learning experience, yeah. What did you want to talk about today?
I think the major thing I wanted to talk about today was finding the confidence in myself that I can be successful. There's an end result that I hadn't realized yet. It's just like the pot of gold. I'm starting to see it, and I didn't really see it before.
That's exciting. Tell me how you got there. Tell me what it is, and then tell me how you got there.
Sure. So what it is that I actually can be a person that doesn't binge eat and that doesn't worry about my weight or yo-yoing, is conscious of it, is conscious of health. But those things aren't daily and minute by minute sort of worries. And the way I got there was by starting with a simple rule 2 years ago when I did the intensive. Reading the books, reading the materials, taking part in everything I could that you offered. And most recently, I did 3 meals a day as a rule and fleshing out squeals within that. For instance, I'm not good at the no sugar rule or the no processed food rule, but I'm really good at not eating inflammatory foods, which encompasses all those things. Figuring out what worked for me and what wording worked for me. And now I'm in a place where things are working, they're going well, and I have a squeal that's about, but I'll just yo-yo again once I reach my goal weight. And I was on a call, and the person leading the call mentioned something about sort of no return or having the confidence in herself or something along those lines. And it suddenly dawned on me that I'm aiming for a weight instead of the confidence in myself. And she referred to it as a future squeal. And so I'm realizing that it's not so much about the weight loss. And I think many of us are capable of doing that from a variety of ways. But for me now, it's more about the maintenance or the mindset that says I'm a success. And I'm sort of wondering about that because I get squeals about, no, you're bullshitting yourself. And I'm used to listening to that. And I'm used to even seeing the whole thing as a lie of achieving sort of weight and health and then knowing that I'm going to yo-yo again.
This is wonderful. And it's the place that serious people get to after a year or two of working this system because they've had a lifetime of yo-yoing before, but they've learned that what caused the yo-yoing was, first of all, dieting and restricting and then binging. So they've learned to eat more regularly and flood their body with nutrition on a reliable basis and let the weight kind of take care of itself at a small deficit. They've taken their body out of that organismic distress that clearly makes the reptilian brain want to say, be less discriminating with food. We need resources. And then all these rationalizations come in about how you're pathetic and you can't do this and you've always failed before, so you're going to fail again. And once you've beaten that a sufficient number of times and you recognize that you really need to focus on the present moment, which is the only moment that you can eat healthy, and that the ability to focus on the present moment and eat healthy is actually a muscle. the reptilian brain will come up with all kinds of justifications for taking you out of the present moment and into this hypothetical future when you're going to be weaker. But when you bring it back to the present and you eat healthy in the present, you stay in your plan in the present, then your confidence keeps building. The more you flex your binge-free muscle, your binge-free now muscle, the stronger that muscle gets. And after a while, these ideas that you're doomed, like there's some mysterious force hanging over you in a dark cloud that's going to force you to give up control of your hands and your arms and your legs and your mouth and your tongue and just dislodge your jaw and consume mass quantities, it just seems silly. It just seems silly after a while. And then your confidence builds and builds and builds. And so I think you're right on track. I think that it's kind of nascent. Is that the word? Nascent? I think it's new. It's a new feeling for you, so it doesn't feel steady yet. But you're right on track. This is exactly what's supposed to happen. You've also worked hard to make it your own. You figured out the wording that you can really embrace. And so as a consequence, it's becoming part of your personality. It's more like a rheostat than a light switch. It's not like all of a sudden the lights are going to go on and you're going to reach food nirvana and everything it's just like every day you feel a little more confident, a little more confident, a little more confident. Maybe you make a mistake and it shakes you a little bit and then you realize you were able to correct that much quicker and you feel even more confident because of that, and you just get stronger and stronger and stronger. I couldn't be more happy. I think you're doing just what you need to do. If there's something that's bothering you about it, or that's something that your reptilian brain is telling you that's making you feel less than confident, then we can work on that. But I don't see a problem. I think what's happening is what's supposed to happen.
One of the things that's like on my mind to say is we did a talk and we talked about shame as a feedback mechanism similar to pain. It was information. And from what I understand about emotions, apparently we experience the true emotion only for 7 seconds, and then everything after is a repeat of it, a replay of it. Irrespective, if we experience pain, we tend to deal with physical pain by taking our hand out of the fire, staying still, whatever it is that we have to do. And I started recognizing that any sort of feedback that was negative for myself, that created a destructive thought, was worthy of me saying, okay, that's feedback, and what are my choices now? And it gave me that interrupt from stimulus and response. And that's been really strong in the last couple of months and exciting because I also have the language now to know what area do I need to work on and what can I do immediately to deal with the situation. So that's been really helpful. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Could I say a couple of words about shame and overcoming it?
Sure.
And I think I might have said this to you in one of our group calls, but we have an audience at large who would find it really helpful, and maybe you can chime in. As a psychologist, a lot of people have come to me about their struggles with shame, and they typically believe that it has something to do with a self-destructive character and that they were humiliated by a parent or a brother or by their friends, and they've just kind of carried that their whole life, and they feel like it's stuck inside them. It's like a toxic introject that's been put inside them, and that we have to work out those original conflicts. And while some of that can be true, I found that when the shame is related to a particular behavior, an impulsive behavior, like overeating, that there's something a lot more practical that allows us to let it go. It's the same mechanism that's at work with physical pain. The purpose of physical pain is to tell you something's wrong and you have to adjust your action so that it doesn't happen again or get worse. The constructive purpose of psychological pain, guilt or shame, is to alert you that something's wrong and you need to adjust your plans and your behavior or your thinking so that it doesn't happen again or get worse. Once it's served its purpose, it's much easier to let go. And so I think I recall this session with you, the group session with you, where we talked about turning guilt into responsibility. I think you felt like you were overeating fruit at night or something like that, which I don't think anybody here thought it was anything to be ashamed about, but you were concerned about what impact it would have on your health and your body. And you felt a little out of control with it. And so I remember we looked very carefully and we said, well, what role do you want fruit to play in your life? And how does Anna want to eat fruit? What would the constraints be for including fruit in your diet? And I think you said something about it being in the morning and so many pieces or something like that. And then you created a rule and you adjusted your rule so that it was compliant with the role that you wanted it to play. And I remember you feeling a great sense of relief because now you knew that it wasn't going to get worse and it wasn't going to happen again. And when I asked you, do you still feel ashamed? You said no. You felt a great release of shame. That's because you turned guilt into responsibility. That's what empowers people to let go of shame, is when they turn guilt into responsibility, particularly about troubles with gratification, troubles with gratifying behaviors. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It leads me to two questions. And by the way, it worked so well. I recently, this last weekend, went away on an outdoor course where we were pretty much outdoors the whole day. I knew how to eat and I didn't get disturbed by the cafeteria style food because I prepared ahead of time, knowing what my dietary requirements were. And it was amazing to come back from a course and feel great. I still feel so good from getting rid of the ambiguity in a language that was right for me, and it was worth the time.
It takes a while to convince yourself of that because it is a little bit of work, but it's worth the time to craft a rule that's just perfect for you so that you define how much you're going to have and when, and and then you can simplify it so it's not hard to remember, and that eventually it just becomes part of you. You don't have to carry it around as a rule forever.
And then when I went to, I don't want to say break the rule, but when I went to do something that altered from the rule, it was glaringly obvious to me. And I was able to like just say, no, pig, that's not the rule, and move on. And there was such beauty in that and such strength in that. It's just me saying it was well worth the time again.
I'm so glad. I was just going to ask you if there's anything else that you wanted to talk to me about or anything else that I could help you with.
Yeah, I do have two things today. I still have this squeal that's like, you're not allowed to have confidence in yourself for the end result. And I'm still wondering about that confusion for me, because what it feels like, it's almost about the maintenance phase or something. I'm certainly within 10 pounds, let's say, of what I had set as an ideal weight. And I'm trying to redefine the parameters of where I feel best, I think is the best way to put it. But I'm still nervous about when I hit that point, if I bounce back up, it's sort of like my end result just feels kind of blurred. And I'm just wondering about that.
I think there are two things happening. One is that do you call it an inner pig? I forget what you call it.
Yeah, I call it a pig. It worked for me. The language worked for me.
Okay. It sounds like your pig has you a little bit confused about where your end target should be. And it's predicting that you're going to yo-yo when you get there. It also sounds like you haven't really gotten there and you haven't experienced this. So how can you have confidence about something that you haven't done yet? That's natural. Do you remember we talked about the Matador study?
Like holding and then doing. So that was the.
They showed that people were more likely to maintain their weight when they got to goal weight if they took breaks to teach themselves the skills of maintaining weight all along the way. Let's say someone had 100 pounds to lose. If they went through that and they did that in 18 months or 2 years or something like that, and they just lost very steadily 3 pounds a month, 4 pounds a month, they had a harder time maintaining than if those people took 2 years. These aren't the exact time frames. I don't remember the study exactly. But they would take these 2-week breaks all along the way where they would eat at maintenance calories. And what happened was when they got to goal weight, they had the maintenance experience, they had the maintenance skills. And so they were a lot more confident in how they could maintain it. When people take an approach where I'm going to lose weight and lose weight and lose weight and lose weight until I get to my maintenance goal, and then I'm going to add all these calories, they don't really have the skills to do that yet. Also, it shocks the system. It tells the body that suddenly there's this feast. And remember, if you tell the body that you're living in an environment where food is sometimes very scarce and there are only occasional harvests or hunts, then it's going to want to hoard all of it can when it senses that the harvest is here. So by taking maintenance breaks all along the way, you're teaching your body that the deficit periods are much shorter, so they're less to be feared, and that there is regular, reliable food around. You don't really crash into your goal weight. You have a soft touchdown the way that a rocket might fire its thrusters in reverse so that it doesn't crash into the moon when it's landing. You don't have that experience yet. You haven't really practiced maintenance, it doesn't sound like, and you haven't been there, so you can't really know. So what you want to do with that is to refocus your mind on the present moment and eating healthy, adjust your food plan periodically to take a little maintenance break so you can experience saying, okay, for the next 2 weeks, I'm not going to lose any weight. And let me prove to my pig that I can do that. Let me prove to my pig that I can hold a steady state, and then I'll resume the trip to the goal that I want to get to. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I don't consciously count calories unless I'm going up or start to not feel good in my body. Then I have a look at what I'm doing. I'm not overly conscious about going down because when I eat well and healthy and balanced, I tend to go down, if that makes sense. I guess there's a conscious process to saying I'm not going to lose or gain and I'm going to have an experience here, is what we're talking about now.
Yes. Yes. Whatever that means to you. Yes.
Yeah, because that means that there will be a different skill involved in that and a different way of thinking. That does make sense. The pig squealing about you don't have the confidence, you're just telling yourself BS and stuff like that is really more to do with not having an experience, or it's not really about a rule as such. Because I don't want to get into this, I'm going to prove the pig wrong, even with maintenance. So what is it when you have that squeal of you can't have confidence in yourself?
Well, the pig doesn't want you to have confidence. The pig is looking for every opportunity to make you feel uncertain about your ability to follow your plan. It lives on uncertainty and doubt. And there is a level of existential food angst. Once you have had the experience of acquiring massive amount of calories without a lot of effort, your brain goes, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, I want to hold on to this learning. It's the brain's job to automate the acquisition of calories and nutrition with the least amount of energy. It would have been a survival advantage 100,000 years ago. In the modern food environment, there's so many calories available for so little effort and so little money that it's kind of an anachronism. But nevertheless, that's the way the brain works. And you know that. Everybody unconsciously knows that these patterns are there, these learnings are there. And so there's angst. What if I reactivate them? And if you do reactivate them, they'll come back.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been thinking about this recently and it came up in a conversation. I'm just going to, interject here. Because I love foraging, I love storing food, and I also want to eat things in their most processed forms. And what I realized, speaking about what we're talking about, the survival instinct and hoarding food, if you will, or whether it's in my body or in my cupboards, I realized that right now I'm not in a survival situation, so I can act differently. And that if I ever was to get into a true survival situation, I would act differently there. And so it was really nice to let go of that need, that survival instinct, if you will, in a way, and acknowledge the time of the world and place where I live. I'm not in a war situation, even though some of my ancestors had been.
Yes, there's plenty of food just around the corner. Even when you don't have money, you have friends, you're not going to starve.
Correct. Starvation for me is very different than someone in Africa or someone in a country that they really are in a famine state.
Yes, exactly, Anna. But what I want you to understand is that because you can't get those patterns out of your brain, you can only label them dormant. The brain labels them dormant and it won't waste energy on them if they don't produce the same food reward that they used to. By the way, the brain will also label the cravings dormant if you constrain them to a very specific set of stimuli. So if you only have a muffin on Saturday afternoon after your workout and never more than one, then eventually you will find that any cravings for that muffin as you pass the muffin place on any other day besides Saturday when you've done your workout, you'll find that those cravings, are labeled dormant and are not bothering you anymore. If you randomly reinforce the cravings so that your brain thinks they could be available at any time, then your brain will fire the craving as much as humanly possible whenever anything that was ever associated with the muffin is presented to it. The store, the smell, because it never knows when those calories might be available and that slot machine could pay off. That's why people get stuck on slot machines, because they're set for variable ratio intermittent reinforcement, which is the most addicting reinforcement schedule in the world. So what I wanted to get to, though, is that you're approaching what I would call the inescapable void. The inescapable void is that gap between being about 98% confident that you're never going to go crazy again with food and being 100% confident. And you get to that gap once you've identified all of the squeals or justifications that your pig might have for breaking your rules, and you have disempowered them by logically disproving them. So there's no really articulable reason for why you shouldn't be 100% confident, yet you don't feel 100% confident because you're experiencing this awareness of the old learning and the old pattern. The only way to get past that void is not logical. Most people say, my program is extremely scientific and cognitive behavioral, and they think I'm a smart dude and everything like that, and they expect the final nail in the pig's coffin, the final lock on the cage or whatever, to be completely logical. Unfortunately, it's not, because you run out of justifications that the pig is giving you that you can logically disempower. And what you then have to do is take a kind of leap of faith. You have to say, I know that I'm in control. I know the only reason the pig ever talked was because it had to convince me to feed it. I know I can get to 100% confidence if I claim it as a birthright.
I'm likening this to, the tortoise and the hare. I think the confusion in bullshitting myself, and sorry to use that language, was because I was used to listening to the pig. And now the actual me, the constructive me, is now surpassing the pig. It is kind of like crossing that finish line first with the pig miles behind, and it was slow and steady. So it's interesting. It's just an interesting sensation. It's like the surpassing. It's almost like the void is all the equalization, and now I'm in front because there's no more energy in the...
Yes, exactly. You've really defeated your cravings. You've really done it already. So Anna, what I was saying is that you recognize that you're out in front. You claim this as a birthright. You claim the ability to be 100% confident as a birthright, because the alternative is to let this thing inside you run the show. Because if you're 99% confident, this thing is going to try 100 times until it's likely to win. You don't want to give it that opportunity. You really have to put it into place and say, I just know that I will never do this again. And you might have other ideas, but that's the best you can do, is have these other ideas. I know that I've defeated my cravings. I'm 100% confident.
Yeah, thank you for that. There is something different that's happening it's very exciting, and it's clear, and I can't even explain it. And it certainly is. There's a lot of experience that's come with this, a lot of conversations, a lot of time. But it started with just the change of a simple rule and changing the thinking just enough to get a different result. So it's phenomenal what's happening right now.
Beautiful. Anna, if it's okay with you, I'd like to wind down here.
Sure.
Is that okay? Do you have any questions or concerns about anything we talked about?
No, I'm thrilled. Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of today's broadcast of Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston. If you'd like to find out more about the products and services Dr. Glenn offers to help you dramatically reduce your cravings and stop overeating in 90 days or less, please visit defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. That's defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. Thanks.